Hello, everybody. Welcome on Into One Soccer. Today, Andy Petrillo, Jordan Wilson, Gareth Wheeler with you. How's everybody feeling today? We're good. We got some good stuff to talk about. Present. Are you here? Yes, you here? Yes, you ready to
Good
go?
old days.
I
You
love
try to
it.
do it for your friend. Here. You try to
Yeah.
do it in the corner. Never worked. Never worked.
Listen, we're all here and we're ready to go. And right out of the gate, we're going to talk about our guy, Tajon Buchanan, because now we are hearing that he made a deal with Villarreal. So it could be, he's going to be leaving Inter Milan on loan via Real with an option to buy. This updated by Fabrizio Romano. And we know there's been a lot of speculation about a potential move for him. And he's joining a side guy that's currently sitting fifth in La Liga. Wheels, do you like this move for Tajon?
I think I do, but that's contingent on a couple things. First of all, Villarreal, a really interesting club. The Yellow Submarine, like play in a city where there's only like 50 or 60,000 people. Like a lot that goes on around there is based around the football, which makes it a really cool place. And there's a lot of players over the course of their careers, whether it be Diego Forlan. I mean, I can go down the list of players who've ended up at Villarreal and given it a really good go and kind of resurrected their careers in a real positive way. They did beat my beloved Manchester United in the Europa League final a couple of years back as well, one of their biggest accomplishments in club history. So an experienced manager under Marcelino and a team that's competitive this year in a La Liga where I think it's really top heavy. There's three teams, then kind of everyone else. But why I'm a little bit reluctant, Andy, it just because depends on a couple of things. One, the player needs to play. He's going into a situation where they do play a 4-4-2 formation. There will be some real competition for places. Firmino plays at right back. Pino plays on the right side in a more attacking role for this team. The future of Juan Foyth is a little bit up in the air heading to the end of the transfer window, but they do need some depth in that area, the field playing down the right side. But is that more in terms of adding depth or adding a player that's going to play on a regular basis? I think that remains to be seen. And the second thing is, what position is Tajon Buchanan going to play? At Inter Milan, he was brought in because he was seen as being that player that could play on the right-hand side ahead of a back three. So more of a traditional wing-back role. This team plays in a 4-4-2, much like Canada plays, by the way. But is he a right back? Is he a right, more attack-minded player? Like, how does he fit in? And I think that for Canada, he's going to play further up the field, obviously. But even for his own career, I think he needs to define what kind of player he is going to be. Where is he best suited to play? And how is he going to extend his professional career, his club career from a professional perspective long-term by honing in on a position and basically perfecting that. I think it's great to be able to diversify and play a number of different roles. That's certainly a strength of his. But I think that a player like Buchanan needs some continuity now. Since he made that move to Inter, he's played just over 300 minutes. That's it. It's time that he plays, defines his role, and takes that next step in his career.
I think for me, with a quick chime, I think that that step is playing a right wing. I look at their squad too with a little injury with a former Arsenal man and Pepe. I could see Tajon going to Villarreal and doing a shift. That doesn't mean starting every game, but playing far more and being an option considered than he was at Inter Milan. Wheels is onto something in terms of if you're playing Tajon as a fullback or a wing back, you know what you're gonna get. But I think if I'm Tajon Buchanan, I'm flying into Spain. I'm looking at, hey, I just want to go and create and be an attacking force. He has that in him, but the continuity is huge right now for that career because also the mental bit. Of course, he broke his leg, but he wasn't playing as well. Then coming back, if you go to another club in another country that is also a top club, and then you're not playing, the hit that could do for the morale is crucial. So he really just has to hit the ground running.
Bottom line is he's just not playing where he is right now. And you're right. We all worry a little bit that the move he makes next, is it going to be lateral? Is it going to be worse? Or here's the thing, could it be better? And could he get that playing time? But the bottom line is he's not getting it right now at Inter Milan. So there is some excitement here for the player, for people who want to see the player succeed. And with the fact that there is an option to buy, do you also look at that, Jordan, as like, okay, maybe this could be a long-term home for Tajon Buchanan?
Yeah, obviously it's up to a few things, right? You need a bit of luck as well. You need to stay healthy and peak at the right time. But when you're thinking about Tajon Buchanan and the fact that for Canada, we were like, where's this guy going to end up? I think the checklist for me was you got to play a top flight somewhere. That's check already with La Liga. Like they have to be competing in Europa League or Champions League. That's already there. A club that has a rich history. That's there with Villarreal. The missing piece, what Wheels alluded to, is just how much burn are you going to get? Where are you going to play? How much impact do you have on the squad? If he goes to Villarreal, and I'm not saying right away, but if he's just a squad player, like he's in the 18 but gets 5 minutes week in and week out, and he's not really pushing, he's at that crucial age in his career where he's got to play. A manager has got to trust him, and he's going to earn that. And Tajon, what I've always loved about him is that chip on the shoulder that he brings. I want to see him get back to that, and I get it. Injuries happen, lack of confidence, dips happen in form when you're a professional. But I think with that makeup and that move, it would just light a fire in his you-know-what, and I think he'll really take off. I really hope he does anyways.
We'll see. Again, it depends on role and fit within the team. Like, is Tajon Buchanan a player that we can sit here and seriously say has a real future playing with Inter Milan? I can't sit here now and say that. I remember 2 years ago in the Champions League playing for Club Brugge, like Buchanan looked like he fit in at that level. It was a team that couldn't compete necessarily with the best of the best. Sometimes they'd have to like really defend with all their might and really cave in and just and be a little bit more pragmatic in their approach. But is Buchanan Inter Milan quality? Like for me, they're a top 3 club in European football right now, and Buchanan needs to prove that he's good enough to do that. If not, a club like Villarreal makes sense. They look to get players on a discount, on a cheap, to help resurrect their career and find value. Clearly, there's another step for Buchanan to take. Inter wouldn't have signed him if they didn't think that was the case. But the number's right in terms of potential price tag for a club like Villarreal to really capitalize on an opportunity. So this could turn into a really good opportunity, both for Villarreal, the club, as well as Tajon Buchanan, the player.
Wheels, Andy, I don't know how you feel quickly, but like when he signed for Inter Milan, you're like, oh, a Canadian signed for Inter Milan. But it also for me felt like too big of a jump at the time, right? But how could you say that to a player when you're looking at what you're getting paid, the club that you're going to play for, and the league that you're playing in? But when I look at Villarreal, it's almost, I don't want to say a step down, but it just seems a little bit more comfortable. It seems like a place where he can go in and really show his worth.
All right, so we'll keep an eye, as always, on Tajon Buchanan and that playing time that he can get overseas. Let's make our way to Major League Soccer, and some news came out about the new qualification here for Leagues Cup starting this year, 2025. So what now they're going to do is only the playoff teams from the previous year, so 9 in the West, 9 in the East, so 18 teams will be playing in Leagues Cup. Bit of a caveat here, gentlemen, as well. MLS, in the vein of not wanting to exhaust players either, say that they cannot compete in more than 2 big events that runs concurrent to the MLS season, which means Vancouver Whitecaps will not be in Leagues Cup this year because they will be competing in Champions Cup and the Canadian Championship. Toronto FC didn't make the playoffs, so they're not going to be in it, which then prompted Robin Fraser, by the way, to say, hey, the Canadian Championship is always a huge bullseye for us, and we're trying to win an MLS Cup. To not have Leagues Cup is not really a bother to me. So, gentlemen, CF Montreal will be the only Canadian team competing in this tournament. Wheels, what do you make of the changes to the tournament? And what do you make of what new Toronto FC head coach Robin Fraser had to say about not being in it?
Leagues Cup was always going to be a difficult one for Major League Soccer, and I sympathize with them because I think that everyone understands the direction that they want to go, more involvement with Liga MX and their incredible fans there, and how to build out a competition. Unfortunately, the format just hasn't been right in terms of the execution. Taking that month off, the short group format, some teams would be out really early and then it would be extended on late, and then balancing that with the US Open Cup and the CONCACAF Champions Cup, and then domestic international tournaments, international tournaments, I should say, like the Gold Cup or the Nations League. Like there's just more, and the Club World Cup that's upcoming this summer in the United States. There's simply too many games and not enough time. So I think that this is a decent compromise to refine the tournament, to potentially find the right mix where they can hit their stride there, as well as recognizing the importance of other competitions as well. I'm not surprised that Razor made those comments when he was with Toronto FC. winning the Voyageurs Cup was always a priority, and he understands what that tournament means to the players, the club, their fans, and Canadian soccer in general. So I like to hear that, because last year the format for the Canadian Championship just wasn't good enough. With such an extended break between the first and second leg in this competition, like it made it very hard to build momentum and really show how important this tournament is. And with MLS clubs and the pressures to play in the Leagues Cup and other competitions related to Major League Soccer, I was sincerely worried about the Canadian Championship and its future. I think this is a good compromise where hopefully there's a little bit more flexibility in terms of the schedule making of this tournament. And it once again creates more of a priority to win that tournament in order to gain access into CONCACAF Champions Cup. So bring it on, the Canadian Championship. This means good things for that, and hopefully for the Leagues Cup as well.
That was for you and your monologue, but shout out to Rob Fraser. He doesn't care about Leagues Cup, and neither do I.
Okay.
Champ for the win, baby. Get that garbage out of here. We play. This is a tournament for us, for Canadians. How it goes full circle. How everyone gets excited when you're a League One team and you go and play a big dog. What this tournament means. The fact that TFC and CF Montreal are going at it from the rip, off the jump this season. I'm excited about that. I love that. Canadian football. Leagues Cup, you could just go.
See, and I agree with all of you guys, but I do wonder, and I don't know if I'm just making more of this than I should, but I do wonder if this is a little bit of the beginning of something when it comes to Canadian teams in MLS, because the odds are just not in Canada's favor. You just have 3 Canadian teams. And I just said that one is always guaranteed to not be in Leagues Cup, because if they win the Canadian title, they're going to be in CONCACAF Champions Cup the next year, plus they're going to be in the Canadian Championship again. So that always guarantees one of the 3 will never be in Leagues Cup. And the other 2 have to really work hard to be in the playoffs to be part of this tournament. So I just like the Leagues Cup may never, like CF Montreal, yeah, they made the playoffs by the skin of their teeth, but this may be a tournament moving forward that we won't see Canadian teams. It'll be tough for Canadian teams to get into. So it's from a marketable standpoint, from a viewership standpoint, there's going to be a time where like soccer will go in this country from like just watching it, right? Like North American soccer. If you're Canadian teams, I spoke to people who said like Canadians didn't really care about the Leagues Cup to begin with, and their viewership numbers completely dipped. That's not good for business. I'm curious to see what kind of system this is just going to create also in this country. If you have if you have one or possibly no Canadian teams competing in Leagues Cup moving forward, just kind of gets a little.
We'll see.
We'll see. I don't know.
There are American markets that are much more closer in terms of their supporters or fan base being entwined in terms of their own MLS club within their city, as well as interest in Liga MX clubs. That exists here, but just not to the same degree. Yeah. The ties between, the American fan base who also watches and supports Mexican soccer, it's there much more than Canadian brand. I always loved when I've seen Mexican clubs come up and play in Montreal, Vancouver, Toronto. It creates a really cool atmosphere, but that's when the games are really on the line. Like the group stage of the last format, it's like teams were going to penalties and drawing and somehow getting through in the competition. Like just the format didn't make sense. It didn't feel like there were real stakes involved there. So I think it makes it much more special when you actually know what's on the line. It is a big game and it is a big moment. So I've shared my thoughts and my worries about what's going on in Vancouver right now. I think all arrows in this country points to we need to continue to bolster and strengthen the domestic league in this country, because that's going to be the anchor. That's going to be what brings everything together within this country. So I'm steadfast on that belief, and we'll see what kind of impact this has long term.
And guys, we know MLS.
Can I mention one other thing, Andy, just on this really quickly? Sure. In the first round of this year's Canadian Championship, Toronto FC plays CF Montreal. Yeah. CF Montreal has that additional competition in Leagues Cup. So I just wonder what that may mean for them and their focus and the priorities heading to this competition. TFC can really focus on league and Canadian Championship. CF Montreal on top of those 2 priorities adds the Leagues Cup into the equation. So we'll see what that inevitably means in this tournament.
Yeah, and I just the cherry on top I wanted to put on this was we just know, and this is not me trying to throw daggers, it's just fact. We just know that MLS makes decisions that really take the American teams into consideration, not the Canadian. Hence the creation of the Canadian Premier League, hence the creation of Northern Super League on the women's side with the way things go with the NWSL, which is why it is so important, to your point, the domestic tournaments here, the domestic league here, because it's not like it. MLS doesn't cater to the 3 Canadian MLS teams, that's for sure. And this is also just another example of how you can see how it hurts them, even in this big tournament that they've had going on now for a couple years. Let's make our way to our domestic league, the Canadian Premier League. Tajon Campbell, this is somebody that we're so intrigued by. The guy can score goals, CPL all-time leading scorer, yet has struggled. And we know he's out at Forge. Jordan, what are you hearing about a possible move for him?
I'm hearing that there are a few CPL clubs interested in him. I'm hearing that, or what I would know or what I could see is that obviously you want to go back home where you've had success, and home being West Coast and being in BC. He was at Pacific when he was dangerous, and even playing against him, that's when he was probably his best. But he did score some goals and important goals for Forge throughout his time. Obviously, he was injured this year and struggled a bit to just find that form. But I could see him on the West Coast. And more importantly and more precisely, I could see him at Vancouver FC based on the fact you have Diaz running the line, based on the fact that he'll be a homegrown kid coming back home and playing on that side of the country. The fact that the way Vancouver FC, even though Wheels and I love them, they are so unpredictable. To have someone who has also been like that in his career right now, based on coming off the injury, I could see him being there, maybe being a 2 up top with Diaz, maybe coming from the left side or on the right, similar to what he did at Pacific FC when they won in 2021. I wouldn't be shocked if he's there, Charles. Like if he signs, if we hear this in a week or two, because the move makes sense. And for me, with CPL players, and you can see it a lot throughout the season, having that homegrown or that home advantage means a lot, that security, that comfortability. So I could see him being there. We just got to wait and see.
All right, Wheels, what do you make of Vancouver FC's roster and how he could possibly fit in that?
Well, Tajon Campbell's played with Guero Diaz before in a very successful Pacific FC side. So having that reunion take place makes a whole lot of sense for me. Must have been an incredibly frustrating season for Tajon Campbell. He scored 1 goal all season. It came in CONCACAF Champions Cup. Like that, that's it. Like he played 300 minutes in the Canadian Premier League, and Forge desperately missed him. When it comes to Vancouver FC, yeah, I mean, they went dry down the stretch. They simply couldn't score goals. I think they scored 3 goals in their final 8 games of the season. This is a team featuring Guero Diaz in it. It was just incredible how this free-flowing, attack-minded side just completely capitulated down the stretch. So they need players like that to help this team create more of a consistent attacking identity moving forward. What I like about their squad overall, and if you add Campbell in, who's still at a decent age of 26, is that there's a very young group of players on Vancouver FC that simply need to play more. This is what the Canadian Premier League and Canadian soccer development is all about. Give these young players like Tahid, Cameron, and the list goes on, more of a look in order to develop before our eyes. I think that the team didn't lean on their young players enough last season. I mean, they're solid at goalkeeper. I think they do have some talent in this team, but trust the youth process and then end up building around them instead of doing it the other way. And I think that good things could come to Vancouver FC this season.
I look at their team too, Trills and Wheels, is like we dissected Vancouver FC. And I will admit, last year I got very excited because of the way that they attacked in the beginning of the season. But Wheels, we always said that they're
the league record in goals scored.
You didn't have to repeat. Trills, you just let
This is why I love I love
like,
way too soon predictions, because then I can bring them back.
This is exactly what you said, Jordan. Thank you, Trills. Miss you. Look. But we were talking about the back line as well. I think Rocco Romeo leaving, going back to Val FC. I'm looking at who they have right now as defenders and who's down that spine of the squad. They need a couple of big players stepping in, specifically at center back, but even in center mid. I thought they were far too light last year, and teams know them. They'll tell them apart if they continue with that group and don't add to Boyce to that squad.
I've said this on a previous show. I think what's making this offseason so intriguing is the amount of player movement we're seeing within the league. And it's wonderful because, you're seeing some players leave and their fan base is calling them traitors. And it's like, this is what we want because there's an engagement, there's an interest. And these players have created names for themselves and they've created reputation. So when they start to move, it garners interest. So this is what I've absolutely been loving. And because of all this player movement that we've seen, I'm curious, Wheels, if you can give me your top 5 CPL moves this offseason.
Come on, Wheeler.
It's list season. Let's bring on the top 5 lists. And I love this one. These are in Gareth Wheeler. Wheels up. My opinion. The 5 most impactful moves across the Canadian Premier League this season. Let's go from 5 to 1. Yeah, Andy Petrillo, this one's for you. I can't believe I'm doing it. I'm putting a goalkeeper in my top 5 list, which I feel is like sacrilegious. But when it comes to Ryan Yesley, I think that it's been widely acknowledged what this goalkeeper can be. He only played 12 games in all competitions last season for Atletico Ottawa and picked up 4 clean sheets in the process. Just that relationship, that 1-2 with Nate Ingham was never going to work out long term. So I think that this is a great move for him. Halifax Wanderers from day number 1, I would suggest that goalkeeping has been a little bit of a weakness. Last season, especially. Last year, Halifax had the 3rd best expected goals against in all of the Canadian Premier League, meaning they weren't giving up a whole lot of chances, yet they gave up the joint most amount of goals. Their goalkeeper last year, Villarreal, I think he really struggled. The year before, he was fine. He was good enough, but last year, he really took a step back. So I think they needed to solidify that position. So Yesley's going to step right in. And the hope is that talent that he has, I mean, he's huge, that can be recognized in Halifax. I put Marco Bustos at number 4 here. Obviously a dynamic player, a natural fit, going back to a place where he had success before. And at 20 years of age, he should be in his prime. I do only keep him at 4 because he scored just 3 times in 37 for Värnamo in Sweden. And he scored just 4 times in all competitions for Pacific in 2022. For him to take that next step, he just needs to contribute, tick up the goal scoring just a little bit. But I think he's a stabilizing force in terms of Pacific's attack, and that was a real liability over the past 2 seasons without him. Mo Babuli coming in at number 3. Forge scored just twice in those 3 playoff games that they played, and they needed a different type of player who can unlock things, and nobody's better for me than Babuli at doing that in the Canadian Premier League. Forge actually finished behind Cavalry in XG last season. Babuli, 7 goals last year. Now he has a better team around him, and he gets to follow his running mate in Brian Wright. They obviously have a connection as well, so for me, it's a really good spot for Babuli. This one, Noah Botnay at age 20. He's everything that the Canadian Premier League is all about. It allows Ottawa, a Batnay going to our nation's capital, to play with just 2 center backs. I don't think that the 3 center back formation did them any favors last year. We'll see what Diego Mejia has in mind, the new manager in Ottawa. But Botnay, 23 games in all competitions last season. But the team, York United, his former side, desperately missed him down the stretch. He can move the ball. He's good with his feet. He's 6'2", 6'3", sizable player. And it's ideal pairing him with an experienced big player like Amir Didic. I think it's a perfect spot, and it provides some balance to that Atletico Ottawa side. And at number 1 is Brian Wright, where Forge is hoping that he brings the right stuff to the Steel City here. He's coming off the best season he's had in the Canadian Premier League, and quite frankly, needs to build off it. The Players' Player of the Year. Forge, when they lost Kwesi Poku last season, essentially didn't play with the number 9 for the rest of the season, and it really hurt them in the Can Champ and obviously playing for the North Star Cup as well. The hope is that he doesn't turn into a pumpkin, because 2 seasons ago, he just scored twice. But if you're looking at ideal positions for him to go, it is Forge. With the players around him, the talent, he's going to get service. He's going to play an attack-minded system. So he needs to hit the ground running, starting with the CONCACAF Champions Cup. I do believe he is the best signing, but he needs to go and improve it because there's marquee signings across the board this offseason in the Canadian Premier League.
Wheels, love your list. Love your list.
It's a great list, but now I'm going to be singing New Kids on the Block the entire time.
That's fair.
Brian Wright
and dancing, no?
Why is there no Nimic out of curiosity? Did you not
can we just tag me in? Let me go.
Yeah.
Number one, thank you, Wheels. Brian Wright, okay, hands down. I think the most important signing that Forge has had, like, ever. For that position, they need a number 9 to come in. Noah Botney, I love the kid. I love the player, but he's not number 2. You forgot Nimick. You forgot Nimick to Forge. You forgot TMG.
I didn't forget.
You didn't put them on the list? Nimick?
No.
Nimick for me is, you're looking at the center back coming in, and what do you call it, man tracker James. You're looking at a similar type of player to come and just take over that area. He should be on the list for sure. TMG, the Halifax Wanderers, should be on the list for sure.
Go ahead. I mean, these are like players replacing like. Abatne brings a completely different dynamic to Atletico Ottawa, where it's not just about maintaining or filling a gap. I think that this is taking a significant step forward. There was no balance. There was no one that was reliable enough to play alongside Didic. You know what to expect week in and week out. And that's why I think Carlos Gonzalez played so defensively. I think this just changes the complete complexion of Atletico Ottawa and what else they're able to add. Nimick, fine player, needs a bounce back year. Wasn't great last year. TMG, big questions changing coast to coast. That is a huge move. Taking him out of his comfort zone on the West Coast, bringing him to Halifax Wanderers. We'll see. I think he's going to be a success, but I considered him at number 5. But the goalkeeping situation in Halifax was much more important for me for them to address. With Mekadech, like, he's going to be the top center back with Halifax Wanderers. So we'll see. Other names like Isaiah Johnston. I love my guy, Gabby Bitar, going to York United. There's been big moves across the board. I was asked to pick 5. That's my list, and I'm sticking to it.
Listen, I always say this. I love lists too, so that you can come up with your top 5. If you don't like that there's somebody missing, my rule of thumb is don't say this guy should be on it, that guy should be on it. Tell me who he's replacing.
Okay.
You want to put somebody in, and I like you did that, Jordo, but if you're going to put somebody in, because you're like, he's got to be on the list, who's coming out? Don't tell me.
I moved, and what I said, I'll move about, I know he's on the list, but I moved him from 2nd to 5th. And I'm putting Nimick in there.
So
and I could take off Babuli. I could take off Mo, love him to bits. I could take off Mo Babuli off of 100%. With this offseason has been dynamite. But you slap Nimick on there. And then
That's
TMG
crazy.
to Halifax, you slap him on there too. Yes.
How can you take off Mo Babuli?
Who else is out? So if you want to,
I'm going off of my list, I'm going Wright. I'm going Nimick, TMG. I mean, Mo could stay, but I'm down doing Yesley. Yesley I'll take, and Mo. But then Abatne.
So Mo makes the list at 5.
No, Mo wouldn't make the list, but I just don't like Abatne.
So you're taking off Bustos. You're taking off Bustos?
Because Bustos sees help. I'm not just signing Bustos and expecting this guy going to score 20 goals. That's never happening. They have to go and sign a top number 9. I know Wheel said Zanata. That's not.
I like Zanata.
That's not the top number 9 straight. You need him to have some help. So Bustos is a great signing. But it's not, and this offseason is not top 5. It's not.
This debate just tells me so far it's
We're
been
gonna
a
keep
great
going.
Offseason. We can go on forever.
It's been spicy.
It's been a great offseason. I love it.
But we have to get to our Tony Bet top picks. Let's look at Thursday's Europa League fixtures. Wheels beloved, your Manchester United on the road to face FCSB. What you got there?
This is the former Steaua Bucharest side, and there's all sorts of legal debate about what's going on between the ownership of that club and the offshoot, which is based upon I don't have time to get into this. United actually 4 wins, 3 draws, haven't lost in the Europa League. I think that continues, but there's no value in betting United on the handicap. They're favorites by a full goal. Instead, give me under 2.75 goals in this one because Manchester United, from an attacking perspective, bring nothing to the table.
Easy, Wheels. No.
It's the truth.
You're going to also have to help me out with what's going on with who Nice is going to be hosting. Moise Bombitos Nice. Who they hosting?
It's on Bodo Glimt, which is a wonderful story. It's a Norwegian side. Like, they're based basically in the Arctic Circle. It's incredible, the rise to prominence. Like, they're in a good position to go through Bodo Glimt. Nice only has 2 points in this competition. They're 4th in Liga. This game doesn't matter anything to them. Take Bodo Glimt on the handicap in this one. I think it's a draw, no bet, but it's at plus 108. That's the play.
Wheels knows.
Okay. Wheels knows. Just when in doubt. Just listen to Wheels. All right, guys, this was a fun one. I wonder if we're going to see more moves because
Twardick as well. Twardick. Put Twardick on the list.
Listen to.
By the way, in a few days, it's going to be February. Like, this is crazy. CONCACAF Champions Cup, they're going to start. We're going to see those teams in action before you know it's preseason. Before you know it, kickoff. Wheels, Jordo, Andy, thanks for tuning in.